Happy Friday, everybody, and welcome to another brilliant and handsome episode of your favorite Mad Men podcast. Made Man, how's everybody doing? It's Friday night, and I have to tell you, I'm tired, and I did a lot of podcasting today. I worked a half a day of work, and you don't care about this, but I don't care either. I'm going to say it. My dog had me up. He had an upset tummy, and like a little baby, I take him for a car ride, and it calms him down, and that was about 1:30, 2 a.m. Got up around 7, started working around 8, had to take my wife to her friends around 9:30, came back, kept working. It was only half a day, but I worked a little later. My wife drove up to her parents' house. Then later on, I and my dog drove up to my parents' house. It's about an hour and a half drive. I'm in some place called Laconia, New Hampshire, and I'm standing outside their house right now, holding a microphone attached to my recorder. I look like an absolute crazy person. But as many of you, or some of you, or at least one of you may know, I run a website called fansnotexperts.com, and I had a few podcasts that I was putting out today. I got them all done, and this is the last one, and I just finished watching episode, I want to say 3, but I feel like it's episode 4, but it doesn't make it because of the double episode. I'm totally thrown off, but I'm going to stay with it. Episode 3 of Mad Men Mystery Date. Now, I'm standing outside and the light is on, but I keep feeling like I'm going to turn around and see a bear attack me. I'm not deep in the woods, but there have been bears here. There have been foxes here. And, you know, I have to keep my eyes peeled. But there were no wild animals in this episode of Mad Men. There was a cougar. Is that a derogatory term? I don't know. For a moment, she was kind of there, then she wasn't really there. I'm rambling, so let's start talking about this episode. Mystery Date. What does that title mean? I have some thoughts. I have some ideas. So why don't we get right into it? And again, I literally just finished watching it. I walked outside. I'm trying to remember what this episode, how it started. I'm almost positive it started with Dawn and Megan in an elevator, or getting in an elevator, getting ready for work, going to work. And Dawn is just sick. He's just sick and coughing and sick, and to the point where Megan doesn't want him to go to work, but he has to go to work for a meeting. Doesn't want to stand next to him in the elevator, so she moves about 3-4 feet away from him in the elevator. This is now they're riding the elevator up to work. And while they're standing there, they almost look like they don't even know each other. And another woman comes in. And I know the actress. She's been in a bunch of different things, but I know her most recently from being one of the moms on Riverdale. I want to say her name is Matcham. I know it's like a German-sounded name, but anyway, attractive woman. You know, I don't know. Actually, age appropriate. I shouldn't say she's older. She's age appropriate for Dawn. And she just walks right in. She's like, Dawn Draper, how great to see you, and stands really close to her. Very flirty. And the thing is why shouldn't she? She doesn't know that this Megan is with Dawn. They look like they're 4 or 5 feet apart from each other. And Dawn's like, oh, hi, how are you doing? She's like, great, how are you? He's like, good. This is my wife, Megan. Oh, hi, okay. She gets off the elevator, and Megan is like, is that going to happen all the time? He's like, look, we're in Midtown Manhattan. I run into a lot of people. So it seems like Dawn runs into people that know him, women that know him, and it's not like it's really bugging Megan, but there's an underlying thing, and we'll get to that in a little bit. Now, Dawn's just feeling sick. He's just crummy, but he's pushing his way through work. And because there is a client for pantyhose that are coming in. Pantyhose or shoes? I believe it's shoes or pantyhose. I don't know. There's pantyhose going on and there's shoes going on, I think. Because we see Peggy working with, I want to say Stan, if I remember his name. They're talking about pantyhose with Ginsburg. And their friend comes in, Peggy's friend. The I don't know if she's just like the artsy person. I don't know if she's a photographer. I don't know what she is. She's the artsy hippie friend. Comes in and wants to show them photos of the grisly murders. See, now that I'm seeing grisly murders, I'm nervous outside here. The grisly murders in Chicago, 8 nurses were killed in the 60s. And I was like, this sounds very familiar. I looked it up. It was the Richard Speck murders. Now Google thinks I'm researching murders, which is, not really what I want Google to. I don't want to see Facebook ads about murderers coming up on my feed. But this somehow they have photographs of these bodies, and they're kind of going around almost like office gossip. Like let's all look at this, let's look at that. It's like you'd see a forwarded email going around nowadays. Now it's literally they're passing the papers back and forth, and Ginsburg is like, I can't do his accent. It's very New York, Brooklyn, like very much neurotic New York. And he's just, he was like, this is disgusting. You guys can't, what are you guys doing? You guys are sickos. He looked at it for a second. He was like, I wish I never looked at it. And I know what that means. I've seen things like, you see like a video or something online where it's like, oh my God, you have to see this. And I'm like, no, I don't want to. Oh my God, I've seen it and I never want to see it again. And Peggy's like, he's right. We shouldn't be looking at these things. The murders kind of intertwine with the episode. Just that going on. There's riots going on. There's all kinds of things going on, and it's kind of in the background of the episode. So while Ginsburg and Stan go into pitch Dawn on, I want to say, I don't know if it's the same thing. This time I think it's shoes. Because they were talking about a Cinderella thing. But no, it must be pantyhose. I don't know. Whatever the thing is. They're talking about, getting ready for the meeting and different ideas they have. And he had a Cinderella idea, but Don's like, that's cliche. And Don's coughing, and he gets a call from Sally. And Sally's all upset because, what the hell's his name? Henry and Betty are off on some vacation. We didn't see them. I don't even know if we saw Betty at all. I think we heard her and we saw Henry, but I don't think we saw Betty. So I don't know if she had to get into the fat suit stuff. I feel like we only saw her we didn't really see her that much in this episode at all. I think we heard her at the end. But Sally is with Grandma something or other. I want to say Georgine, or that's from Willy Wonka. But she is with, it's Henry's mother. So it's like her grandmother, basically, her step grandmother, whatever we want to call her. And she doesn't like being with her. I guess Bobby's off at camp wetting his bed, and they don't even call her. They don't even check on her. And Don said something funny. He was like, I think she said, "Can you come over and get me?" He's like, "I'm sick. I don't want to get sick in that haunted mansion." I think he called it, or I don't know. It was a line that actually made me laugh out loud. I love Don and Sally's relationship. I love that they talk now. Like Don talks to her like not like grown up, but he's like, he's the parent, he's the adult. He tells her, "Stop doing this, don't do that. This is what you're doing. This is what's happening." But it's also not like talking down to her. I don't know. I just like seeing their relationship and where it goes. And this kid's turning into a really good actress. And I know she's Sabrina now on Netflix, but you could see she's like really, I don't know, she's coming into her own. We see a lot of that in this episode with her. So why don't we stay with Sally for a bit? Sally's with the step grandmom, and she's just kind of giving her flack. Like she didn't want to eat the sandwich, even though she asked for the sandwich. And the grandmother's like, "You will sit there and eat it." And then later on, she wanted to watch TV. And later on, and then she hears the grandmother, she sees the grandmother reading about the murders, and she wants to read it. And the grandmother smacks her hand, and then she says, "I shouldn't have done that." But then she talks about how when her father was, when she was a kid, her father kicked her across the room once and said, "That was for nothing. And it was the best advice ever." Basically, get ready to get kicked around. I don't know. That was a pretty awful thing to say and a pretty awful thing to do. And to share that with the kid, like that's actually going to be helpful, I don't get it. So a car just drove by and I realized I look like an idiot holding a microphone. So later on in the episode, Sally steals the newspaper, reads about the murders, all about the murders. Then she hears the grandmother talking about it on the phone. She tries to overhear, and the grandmother stops talking about it. But later on, she's reading the newspaper and reading about the murders and seeing the sketch drawing of the guy. And she freaks out, and she actually scares the grandmother. She comes downstairs just in her pajamas and I can't sleep. And the grandmother's like, you shouldn't have looked at this. That's bad. And they talk about it a little bit. And Sally's like, why would he do that? And why would they kill? And why can't he rape 9 people? And she's like, you just can't. And it was like a little bit bonding, but the grandmother also then gave her half a sleeping pill, which I'm like, I hope that doesn't lead to Sally getting on pills. We don't need to see that. This isn't the beginning of something, is it? It's just a one-time thing, I hope. But the episode, their part of the episode ends with the Francises, Henry and Betty, coming home and finding the grandmother, she had a big butcher knife because she's scared too. A lot of people are scared. So she sees the grandmother with a butcher knife, and they couldn't find Sally. Sally's sleeping under the bed. And they talked about earlier in the episode that the girl who survived. So there were 8 women killed, and 1 nursing student survived by hiding under the bed. So then we have Sally hiding under the bed. Now, earlier in the episode, she was watching television, and she was seeing a game called Mystery Date. So there's your literal title of Mystery Date in this episode. But I like to think that there was also a different use of Mystery Date in this episode, and it has to do with Don. So Don's sick at work. He's Megan wants him to go home, but he has this big meeting, and Megan's worried about him. That seeing that woman made him realize that there have been other women, and he thinks of these women and this woman, and he thinks that some of these women were around while you were still married, and now you're married again. And he's like, no, I want to spend the rest of my life with you. This is different. My life, which could be soon because I'm very sick. But he was basically trying to reassure her that that's not him now. That was him then, and she doesn't have anything to worry about. But I think Don had that in the back of his mind too, and we'll get there because Don does go to the meeting. Ken's there. I think Pete was there. No, Ken was there. Stan and maybe Stan was there. And Michael Ginsberg, he gave the presentation, all the art and everything, and the people are like, you're a genius, this is great. And he's like, that's great because we had another idea. And he starts telling the whole Cinderella idea. They're like, oh my God, that's great too. Let's actually do that. And that pissed Don off. So they went to a bar to get drinks afterwards, and Don was like, you don't do that. You never do that again. This is a lot of, or else. You bring those things to me first. And he's like, okay. He's a really stand-up guy. And Ken Cosgrove, it was Ken, so it wasn't Stan. Ken Cosgrove was like, you almost just got fired, right? He's like, nah, I don't think so. He's like, I'm pretty positive you almost just got fired. If you think about it, you love having great ideas for clients. And you love giving them all the ideas, but you want to get paid for those ideas. So if you have 2 great ideas, save one. Use it for another client. Use it for another campaign. But the fact that they talked about one thing and then they talked about another thing, I don't know if that means these people could we'll take both and for the price of one or whatever. But it's something where, what if it sucked? So that's why Don's like, you got to come to me first. And hopefully Ginsberg figured that out. Now, after that, Don went back to his apartment, and this is where it took me a little bit to figure out what was going on. So he just goes to pass out, to sleep, because he feels like crap. But then there's a knock at his door, and he opens the door, and it's that woman. I don't remember her name, but it's the woman from the elevator, the woman that he had an affair with many, many years ago. And she's like, I want to come in. And he's like, you can't be in here. You have to get out of here. You have to go, you have to go through the service elevator. So he whisks her out to the back of the service elevator. She's like, no, he goes, if my wife sees you, we're dead. And so he whisks her out the back door to the service elevator, goes to bed. He's like, oh my God, goes back to bed and wakes up a little while later, and she's sitting right on the bed. And she's like, I let myself in. We can do this. It'll be quick. It'll be nice. It's already dark at this point. He's like, what are you doing? This isn't right. And then she kind of, not forces herself. She kind of gets a little closer, and then he starts kissing, and boom, they start basically doing it. And at this point, I'm thinking, this cannot be happening. This has to be, like, what if this whole thing's a dream? So then we get another scene where he's like, this can't be over. And she's like, no, we'll keep doing this and keep doing this and keep doing this. And then Don freaks out and jumps on her and shoves her down and chokes her and kills her. And then he shoves the body under the bed and goes back to sleep. And I'm like, yes, this is 100% a dream. He wakes up. Megan's there to give him some breakfast or a coffee or something. And he looks down like, oh, there's no body there. This whole thing, maybe this was Don's mystery date also, that like this girl showed up out of nowhere. He hadn't seen her in a while. And it sparked an old fear in him. Is he going to be the same jerk that he was to Betty, to Megan? And you could see he didn't want to, but he still gave in his dream. So this dream is just him kind of confronting his fears of being the same son of a bitch that he was to Betty. And I hope he's not that way to Megan. But he is Don Draper, so we really, you can't count that out at all. And that's really Don's story. Or Don Draper's story. There's another Don and another story. We'll get there. But that's really it for Don. So why don't we jump over to Peggy? We'll jump over to Peggy. So Peggy, well, here's the thing. Pete's in this episode for a minute. He goes into Roger's office and he's like, hey, good news. The strike is not affecting the airline. I can't think, Mohawk Air, so they'll still be going. So they're ready for the campaign on Monday. Roger's like, great, awesome. Pete's like, terrific. Have a great weekend. We'll do it Monday. And he heads off and Roger's like, great. And the door closes and Roger's like, shit. He waits for Pete to leave. He sneaks over to Peggy and he's like, listen, I need you to do something for me. And she's like, I thought Ginsburg was the man for the job. He's like, oh, first they're like, where's Ginsburg? Where is he? I don't know. He left for the day. Well, go find him. And Stan's like, sure, yeah, I'll start. I'll start by looking at the rest of the world, and then I'll go check to see if he's at my apartment. Meaning, screw you. I'm getting out of here, and I'm going home and going back to my house. And it feels like Roger's lost a little luster, where like at the old Sterling Cooper, if Roger said something like that, people would jump. And now the guy's like, yeah, no big deal. And then Peggy's there alone, and he's like, listen, I need you to do this. He's like, what about Ginsburg? Well, he's not around, so you have to do this. So he gives her $10, and he says, you need to do this, and you need to say, if Pete and Ginsburg ask, you need to tell them that I told you to do this, and I told you to do this a couple weeks ago, or a week ago, or whatever. She's like, okay, great, $10? He goes, yeah. He goes, what's your going rate? He goes, well, it'll be $10 to do the job, but it'll be a lot more expensive for me to keep quiet about it. And Roger, it was just a great moment of Peggy sticking up for herself, being cocky and having some guts, and Roger just being squirmish and having to give in. And it was some great moments between the two of them. He ended up giving her over $400 so that she could work late on this thing for him. Basically, this whole creative brief out of nowhere. And she stays late. She starts working, and then she hears a bang or a noise in the background, and she gets a little freaked out. Now, everyone's on edge when you see about all these murders. I think that freaked everybody out. Now, she hears a noise, and she starts going around the office, and then she hears it in Don Draper's room, opens it up, and it's Don's secretary. Now, she's like, oh, I'm sorry, I must have dozed off. It turns out that she has slept there. I don't know how long she slept there, but she slept there. She's afraid to go home. She's afraid to take the subway. There's a lot of police presence. There's some riots going on, so she's just safer for her to stay at work, it seemed like. She lives with her brother, lives with her mom. Peggy's like, nope, you're coming home with me. She talked her into it, brought her home. They chatted, and Peggy was like, I know it's, do you want to be a copywriter? She's like, no, I like my job. And she's like, I was Don's secretary too. And, I kind of was discovered by accident. But it's hard to be for me. And, it's not as hard, I understand it's not exactly the same thing, because Don is Dawn, the secretary, is a black woman. And she was part of the whole thing when they made the ad about not throwing water out the window. She showed up. She had a resume. She was qualified. She got the job. And, Peggy's like trying to relate to her, but relate to her more as a woman, not as being a black person, because that's a little different. But again, in the 60s, women had their issues. Who am I to say? Women still have their issues. Obviously, I feel like I'm painting myself into a corner here. No. What I'm trying to say is Peggy's talking about her issues and trying to relate them to Dawn's issues. And she knows it's not exactly the same, but she's trying her best. There, I think that was a mature way of saying it. And they were talking about Dawn Draper, and she's like, "You can say whatever you want. You can speak your mind here." And the woman was just like, Dawn, the female, was just like, Mr. Draper, I just don't want you to tell him that I was sleeping in his office. She's like, no, I would never tell you that. And so she's like, oh, I've had so much to drink. She's going to go head off to bed, and she looks down, and she sees her purse. And Peggy, you could see Dawn see it, and you see Peggy think it, and just be so friggin' like, I think she was embarrassed that she even thought like, oh, should I leave my purse out here? Is that safe? She cleans up a few beer bottles and leaves the purse and goes to bed. Wakes up the next day and finds all the sheets cleaned up and a note saying, thank you for the hospitality. Sorry if you're putting you out. She put it on Peggy's purse. I don't know if that was a little, hey, I didn't touch your purse kind of thing. But that was really that part of the story. I think that was it for there. It was just, Peggy and Dawn having some character building moments together, and Peggy was great in this episode. Terrific. And I love the way she grifted Roger. And our last story really isn't connected to The Office at all. There's no interaction with anyone else, and that is Joni's story. Her husband, I want to say his name is Greg. Yes, it's Greg. Boom, Greg Harris. He is coming home. He's coming home. And she's excited to meet so she can meet his child, even though it's Roger's. Kevin is Roger's baby, but Roger has nothing to do with it. So, first of all, Joan's mom, her voice, the way she talks, everything about her, I dislike. She's very down. Oh my God. Oh. Okay, I just got the crap scare out of me. My wife just came out the door with my dog. Oh, whew, you can feel the chills going up my spine. Actually, here's a perfect moment for a word from our sponsor today. Okay, folks, it doesn't get more real than that. And I was telling you, I was a little freaked out. I'm out here. There could be bears. There could be wolves. There could be foxes. I'm talking about the Richard Speck killing these women. And then I hear, I don't know if you even heard the door open. And I was like, what is that noise? And I turned, the doors open behind me. I had no idea. Scared the crap out of me. It was my wife with my dog because he needed to go out. And so that was very real, but it actually was a great moment to stop and just, take care of my dog and play a wonderful message from our sponsor. So, where was I? Okay. Greg, Mr. Harris, the fake dad to Joni's baby. He's home. And I was saying how much I dislike Joan's mother. And she's just very demeaning and very much talked down, and it's just the way her voice is very much like this, and Joni this, and Joni that, and blah, 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 blah. But she is there to help her daughter. So Greg's back. He's excited. Joan's trying to get everything right, trying to get cakes and I think the drinks and everything correct for a party. And the mother's like, Joan's like, he wants to see Kevin first, and the mother's like, yes, for a second, but then he's going to want to see you, and he's going to miss you. He hasn't been around a woman, and the way, he's not used to talking to women. You have to be respectful. And it was all these, kind of like mismanners type things. Well, Joni's a modern woman. She doesn't need that crap. So Greg comes home. He kisses her at the door. He first of all, he knocks on the door of his own apartment, which was weird. Or rings the doorbell. A little weird. But maybe for the big greeting. She gives him a big kiss. He comes in. He sees the baby. He's all excited. Joan gets his bags. He's like, no, don't worry about it. And then the mother's like, this is great. This is Kevin. I'm going to go to the store with Kevin, leave you two alone. I'm like, oh, good. He takes Joan and boom, whisks her away to the bedroom for some, marital lovemaking, I believe is the proper term. Now, later on in the episode, they have, I forget what they ate. They just ate food, right? Because they were going out later for better food. So that's right. He was making a bologna sandwich. He's like, I got you steak. He's like, we had steak in Saigon. We didn't have bologna. And he's making bologna sandwiches, and he was just happy to be with his kid, his mother-in-law, and his wife. And everything's peachy keen, even though I hate this son of a bitch. Everything's peachy keen with him. And they go out for, he's like, listen, I have to tell you something, and it's not going to be great. Joni, I have to tell you. She goes, I understand. You have to go back. He goes, yes. He goes, but you can do it. It's only 40 days. He goes, no, it's a year. Oh, what? A year? Yes, they need me, blah, 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 and I need to go back. And she's like, oh, I can't deal with it. It's like, we can do it. We can figure it out. It'll be great. So Joni's kind of upset about that, but I think she's trying to deal with it. But very upset because he didn't even consult Joni. So now they go out for dinner. They go out with his parents. And so it's the whole family. You got little Kevin, you got Joan, you got Joni's mother, you got Steve and his parents. And the mother starts saying things like, oh, why can't you talk him out of this? And the mother-in-law, Joan's mother, is like, you were in the service, Greg's dad. Why don't you write to the congressman? And the mother's like, what is that going to do? Why would he change his mind when Joan can't do it? And then it came all crystal clear. This dude is not being pulled back in. He is re-enlisting. He is volunteering to go back. And I have a theory why. Because, you could say that it's duty. You could say that he doesn't want to leave his countrymen behind. But I also think that he finally feels like he is needed. He's important. And remember, when he was working at the hospitals, he kind of couldn't pull it as a surgeon, which kind of was what led to this whole army thing in the first place. And now he's at some place where people respect him. A young soldier came up and saluted him, and then the waiter was rude, and he talked back to him, and the guy apologized and called him sir. He's finally a well-respected man, and he is needed. He has 20 doctors and nurses who need him, and he needs to go back. And meanwhile, let's be honest, Roger Sterling cuckolded him, and that baby is his. But as far as this guy's concerned, his duty is overseas. And the next morning, Joan's like, listen, I think you should go. He goes, Joni, I knew you'd come around to it. She goes, no, I think you should go and not come back. Ooh, he's like, don't talk to me like that. He grabs her up by the arm. He goes, I'm a good person. And she says to him, you're not a good person. And you know you're not a good person, and you weren't a good person before you even met me, or before we were even married, and you know what I'm talking about. Bam! Sumbitch, I've been waiting so long for something to come up from this. This has to be him raping her in Dawn's office, forcing himself upon her. That has to be what she's talking about, right? And he's like, if I go out this door, I'm not coming back. She's like, whatever, then don't come back. And he's gone. Now, is he gone forever? I don't know. I'm not sure, but he's going back to Vietnam, so maybe this is just a way to get him out of there. And I hate to say this, but if this is a way for Joan to get with Roger, true love, maybe I'm all for it. I know Roger's got Jane, but you could see he's not happy. He thought he'd be happy with his young wife, but guess what? It's just he's in the same boat. he's like, I got another wife. It's just another wife. It's a younger version of what I had before. Where Joan is the one that really lights his fire. I was going to say, he put a baby in Joan, which is a terrible thing, the way of saying it, but it's true. Maybe this is the beginning of that. I don't know. Personally, I would love to see those two kids rekindle. And not just on the side of the road, for real, passionate love. But it seems like now Joan's on her own. In fact, the episode ends with Joan and the baby and the mother's lying in bed. And Joan just kind of, looking like she's like, what the hell am I going to do now? But then the song played that said, he hit me. And I'm thinking, did we ever see him hit her? I don't remember that. I know the raping, which is worse or bad enough or whatever. I don't know what you want to call it. I'm not going to level one or the other, but if I don't know, but I was like, did he also hit her? Is that what that song's saying? I wasn't sure. But really good episode. Really good episode. Mostly a lot of character stuff. No major moments. Ginsberg wowed a client. Then he almost talked himself out of his job. Peggy got a little extra cash by standing up for herself. Made a new friend at work, but also kind of insulted her a little bit. But insulted her just by almost insulting her. We met Dawn a little more. Dawn, the secretary, lives with her brother, lives with her mother. But it's just a lot of police presence. It's hard for her to want to go home. It's too far away, and I think she was like, no cabs will go that far or something. And it's just, so she's been staying with Dawn in Dawn's office. And this night, at least she was able to sleep over Peggy's house. Sally, a little freaked out. Just, curious kid who got freaked out. But maybe she bonded with this grandmother. I'm not sure. I hope she did. But we'll see. We'll see if anything comes from that or if this was just kind of a one-time thing. And Dawn, kind of maybe trying to face his fears of, is he going to be another crappy husband like he was last time? Or is he going to be better? That's, I think, his story here. And I liked it. I liked it a lot. Really fun episode. Fun? I don't know if fun's the word, but really good episode. With a moment that actually made me laugh out loud when anytime Dawn insults their house, Henry and Betty, and Sally and Dawn were kind of going back and forth making fun of Henry, like, oh, he's so important. You'd think they'd get a flight earlier or something wherever they were. So I love that. I love Sally and Dawn bonding. Love it. It's one of my favorite things. And if it's at the expense of Betty and Henry, even better. So that's it, my friends. I am done talking. I just turned away because a car just drove by, and I look like, I don't know what I look like. I'm holding a recorder in one hand and a handheld microphone in another. So it looks like I'm singing karaoke to nobody. Okay, those cars are gone. And you might have heard actual real fear in my voice, which was first very real, and it was exciting. I hope you enjoyed it. Okay, so that's really it. I'm going to go in now and get this up for you, the listener, the most important part of the show. I want to thank you for subscribing, listening. You know where to find me: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever podcasts are available. Tell a friend. If you have a friend who's watching Mad Men right now, tell them to check us out. Maybe throw us an iTunes review or Apple Podcast review, whatever the hell they call it now. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, it's at MadeManPod. The Facebook page is fansnotexperts.com, but I really don't do a lot there. The website is fansnotexperts.com. That's where you will see every posting of every Made Man episode. As well as every other podcast we have. We're basically a podcasting network made up of two people that are doing all the podcasts. But we're enjoying it. And we're having fun. And I love doing this. And, I love the aspect of not preparing. Just off the cuff, talking about what I just saw. So much so that after I'm done with Mad Men, I have a couple other shows. Some shows I've seen already, and it's rewatching and giving thoughts. And then I have some thoughts of other shows that I may watch that I've never seen before. So if you like this, hopefully you stick with me in the future. But that's not now. That's many, many, many weeks away, because it's only season 5. We still have a long way to go. But I want to thank you. I want to thank you for staying with me as I go back into my in-laws' house and try not to wake up anybody. Where was I? I want to thank you, the listener, for coming along with me on this crazy, handsome journey as I strive to become... I'm going to cough. There it is. Okay. I strive to become a made man.
Fans not experts.
I was going to sit up on this porch, but listen to that friggin' fountain. It's been going all night. It's crazy.